Imagine a regional bloc that once marched troops across borders to prevent civil wars, stopped a dictator from clinging to power, and promised that a traveler with a single passport could crisscross an entire region to trade, study, or visit family. Now imagine that same bloc suddenly facing a wave of military takeovers, public anger, and 3 of its members walking away to build a rival alliance. That is the story of ECOWAS in West Africa today. Stay with me, because by the end of this film you will see not only how ECOWAS rose and why it is losing power, but also what has to change if the region is going to avoid a dangerous split that hurts ordinary people most. Let's set the stage in plain language for all audience. ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, is like a regional club founded to make life easier across national borders. Think of it as a smaller, less formal version of the European Union, but in West Africa, with the big goals of free movement, peace, and economic cooperation. For years, ECOWAS built its reputation not just on talk, but on action. In the 90s, its peacekeepers, known as ECOMOG, waded into brutal wars in Liberia and Sierra Leone to keep those conflicts from detonating the entire neighborhood. More recently, when a longtime ruler in the Gambia refused to accept an election he lost, ECOWAS showed up, and he left. This gave ECOWAS the aura of a bloc that, while imperfect, could still bend the arc toward stability and democratic order. So how did that aura fade? The short answer is that a perfect storm hit, a surge of coups in Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, and Niger, an insurgency that keeps evolving across the Sahel, public frustration with security failures and economic pain, and a string of blunt, sometimes contradictory decisions by ECOWAS that alienated people it needed to win over. The long answer is what you are here for. Start with the coup wave. In Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, populations exhausted by years of jihadist violence and distrust of political elites cheered soldiers who promised a tough new approach. Those juntas quickly recast ECOWAS as part of the old order. When ECOWAS suspended and sanctioned them, many citizens saw the bloc as punishing ordinary people while their elites had fled or adapted. Anger grew. Street rallies featured not only national flags but signs rejecting ECOWAS and, in some places, France, the former colonial power that had been central to security partnerships. The sanctions were meant to pressure juntas to restore constitutional rule. Instead, the sanctions hardened them and fueled a narrative that ECOWAS was taking orders from outside. That story spread fast on radio, TV, and especially social media. Niger was the turning point. ECOWAS threatened the ultimate penalty, even hinting at military action if the junta did not back down. But the threat didn't translate into a credible plan. The bloc's biggest military and economic power, Nigeria, faced internal resistance to any intervention. Some member states publicly disagreed with the use of force. The longer the threat hung in the air without action, the weaker ECOWAS looked. In diplomacy, threatening something you can't or won't do is worse than saying nothing at all. It damages deterrence, emboldens your opponents, and sows doubt among your friends. As the standoff dragged on, the human cost of sanctions in Niger mounted. Borders were closed. Goods piled up. Power supplies were interrupted because cross-border electricity sales were part of the pressure. Markets felt it. So did hospitals, schools, and small traders. When ECOWAS finally lifted most sanctions for humanitarian reasons, the damage to trust was already done. People remembered who suffered and who decided to apply the pressure in the first place. That memory matters in politics. While ECOWAS was recalculating, the juntas acted. Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger formed their own security pact, the Alliance of Sahel States, and then moved to create a deeper political and economic union, a confederation, signaling a long-term break from the ECOWAS orbit. They reopened their borders to each other even as they kept up a defiant stance toward ECOWAS. They also reoriented security ties. French forces left. The United States, long a quiet but important counter-terrorism partner in Niger, pulled out too. Russian military instructors and new defense arrangements appeared. Whether any of these shifts will actually make people safer is an open question, but geopolitically it was a striking retuning of who has influence on the ground. ECOWAS, which used to set the tempo of regional responses to crises, suddenly found the music changing without it. Why did ECOWAS struggle to respond? Some of the causes are structural. It is easier to deploy peacekeepers to a war between armed groups than it is to force an entrenched military government to hold elections. It is easier to deter a single dictator from resetting the constitution than to reverse a cascade of coups when publics are ambivalent about the politicians who were ousted. Some causes are internal. ECOWAS membership is diverse, francophone and anglophone, coastal and landlocked, resource-rich and resource-poor, so consensus is always hard, and harder still when a security crisis collides with economic pain. Also, the bloc's ability to put real muscle behind threats depends on Nigeria's domestic politics. If Abuja is divided, ECOWAS is divided, and everyone can see it. Another cause is reputational. The brand of ECOWAS is built on two pillars: credible security action when red lines are crossed and practical benefits for ordinary people during normal times. Both pillars took hits. The threat to use force in Niger went nowhere, and the sanctions that punished everyday people overshadowed the bloc's longer-term wins like visa-free travel and cross-border trade corridors. When the daily lived experience is hunger, price spikes, and fear of violence on rural roads, a regional organization can look distant, technocratic, or even hostile. If the message drifting through bus stations and WhatsApp groups is that regional rules protect elites more than they protect farmers, truckers, teachers, and market women, you have a legitimacy problem. Then there is the information battle. Narratives travel faster than communiques. In parts of the Sahel, ECOWAS was painted as an instrument of foreign powers. Every misstep, real or perceived, was amplified. Meanwhile, jihadist groups exploit local grievances, promising protection or revenge where the state is weak. When people have lost family to attacks, lost income because borders are closed, and lost faith that politics brings improvements, they are willing to try something new, including new alliances and new leaders in uniform. To be fair, ECOWAS still has assets. It has a court that citizens can petition, which is rare for a regional body. It has decades of experience deploying observers and negotiating transitions. It has a free movement protocol that, when respected, reduces friction for millions. It has member states that remain invested in the project and understand that a fragmented region will be poorer and less safe. But assets do not automatically generate power. Power is the ability to shape outcomes. And lately, outcomes have been shaped by actors outside ECOWAS or outside its control. Let's look at Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger as a single arc. All three have faced relentless insurgent pressure from groups affiliated with Al-Qaeda and the so-called Islamic State. All three accused international partners of failing to deliver security results. All three turned to new security patrons and rhetoric about sovereignty. They coordinated policies and messaging, cast themselves as the authentic voice of the Sahel struggle, and took bold steps to decouple from ECOWAS. In doing so, they forced ECOWAS into a dilemma. Punish them and you inflame public opinion and fracture the bloc further. Ease up and you rewrite the incentive structure for the rest of the region. The result has been a middle path that satisfies no one: stern statements, rolling sanctions and suspensions, and then partial reversals. In strategy, clarity of ends and credibility of means matter. ECOWAS has had trouble with both. What does losing power look like in practice? It looks like threats that are not carried out. It looks like neighbors cutting side deals on security while your diplomatic calendar fills with emergency summits that change little on the ground. It looks like border closures that damage traders, then hurried reopenings that try to repair political damage. It looks like a rival confederation redrawing the regional map and talking openly about new currencies, new passports, and new institutions. It looks like ordinary people asking whether their prosperity and safety are best served inside your rules or outside them. Is the decline irreversible? Not necessarily. There are practical steps that could help ECOWAS rebuild influence. First, recalibrate the sanctions playbook. Broad trade embargoes that hit food, medicine, and electricity turn populations against you. Targeted measures aimed at leaders, their finances, and the arms pipelines they rely on are more defensible and less likely to backfire. Second, make security cooperation tangible and local. Communities under attack want protection they can see, not communiques. That means supporting police and gendarmes who know the terrain, helping governors and prefects restore basic services as soon as towns are retaken, and investing in roads and markets so normal life rebounds quickly. Third, fix the messaging. If you are defending constitutional order, show how that order improves daily life, not just how it satisfies legal texts. Fourth, widen the tent. Religious leaders, traditional authorities, traders' unions, and youth associations shape opinion. Bring them into consultations before decisions are announced, not after. Fifth, accept that the security chessboard has changed. The presence of Russian military actors and the exit of French and US troops are facts on the ground. ECOWAS needs a policy for engaging or insulating against those shifts, not just condemning them. If juntas insist on their chosen partners, ECOWAS can still set red lines on conduct and insist on protections for civilians. Sixth, invest in what only ECOWAS can do at scale: customs modernization at borders, mutual recognition of professional qualifications, energy interconnections that reduce blackouts, and common standards that help small businesses export. These are not glamorous, but they are vote-getters in the court of public opinion. For viewers in the United States, here is what to watch. When Washington left its last base in Niger and when Paris scaled back across the Sahel, a vacuum opened. Vacuums rarely last. Other actors step in. The question is whether that realignment will reduce violence or just rearrange it. A weaker ECOWAS means more bilateral deals, less transparency, and more room for rival powers to define the agenda. That can boomerang in the form of migration crises, humanitarian emergencies, and a breeding ground for transnational crime. Stability in West Africa is not charity work. It is enlightened self-interest for partners far beyond the region. Now, what does all this mean for ordinary West Africans? It means the cost of a bag of rice or a jerrycan of fuel can swing when borders shut. It means a student's plan to study in a neighboring capital depends on whether a travel document is recognized. It means a herder's seasonal migration route might now cross a frontier where the rules changed overnight. It means a truck driver can spend days at a checkpoint because new levies popped up after a political rupture. These are not abstractions. They are the texture of real lives. Any policy that ignores that will eventually fail, because people vote with their feet and their wallets long before they vote at the ballot box. So why is ECOWAS losing power in West Africa? Because power rests on performance and legitimacy, and both were weakened by the coup wave, the handling of sanctions, and the mismatch between soaring rhetoric and limited follow-through. Because a rival bloc seized the initiative with a sovereignty narrative that resonated in places where fear and frustration run deep. Because external security partners left or were pushed out, and new ones arrived, changing who holds leverage. Because internal divisions within ECOWAS, political, linguistic, economic, were exposed at the exact moment unity was required. None of this is destiny. But it is the current trajectory. Here is the pivot. If ECOWAS can align its tools with people's priorities, security you can feel, markets that function, borders that work, and rules that are applied consistently, it can regain influence. If it cannot, parallel structures will calcify, and the region will split into competing clusters with higher transaction costs and fewer shared solutions. That is a future of lower growth, more smuggling, and a longer, uglier fight against extremists who thrive in governance vacuums. As we close, let me leave you with questions that matter, not only for leaders but for all of us who care about this region. If you live in West Africa, do you feel safer under the current mix of alliances and policies than you did before the coups? If you live in a coastal ECOWAS state, do you think the bloc should keep a hard line against juntas even if it hurts cross-border trade? If you live in the Sahel, do you believe the new confederation can deliver better services and security than the arrangements you had before, and what proof would change your mind either way? If you are part of the West African diaspora in the US, what stories do your families tell about ECOWAS helping or failing them? And for everyone watching, what single measure, sanctions reform, targeted security assistance, dialogue frameworks that include communities do you think would most quickly reduce violence and rebuild trust? Thank you for watching AfriPol Lens. If you found this analysis clear and useful, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with a friend who follows West African politics. Drop a comment with your take on the questions I asked. Your insights guide what we investigate next, and your engagement helps this channel bring more nuanced, field-grounded reporting to a global audience. If you want a follow-up deep dive on any piece of this puzzle, from the new Sahel Confederation to the economics of border closures, tell me, and we will get to work.